Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the next IVSS webinar for the 2021 IVSS. And this is Mapping Your Globe Data with Esri ArcGIS. And we're joined today by two excellent guest speakers. We've got Emma Hagen and Desiray Wilson. And I'm Amy Barfield, and I work at the Globe Implementation Office in Boulder, Colorado. Right now it's beautiful and snowy and really nice. So welcome, thank you. To start off, I'm just going to give you a little overview of our IVSS 2021 timeline. So we've had two webinars already. So we had an informational webinar, just an overview of the 2021 IVSS, as well as a Globe Data Science intro and Q&A that we recorded 2 weeks ago with Ksenia from the GIO, and both of those are now available on the IVSS website. So today we are filming our Mapping Globe Data with ArcGIS, and after this recording, we will be posting it on IVSS website. And we've got two new exciting webinars coming up in November. We've got a dual language English and Spanish webinar about how to create an effective scientific poster. And that's on November 11th. And on November 18th, we've got a dual language English and American Sign Language on how to develop a good research question. So hopefully you can join us then, but those also will be recorded and put on the IVSS website. We've also, just stay tuned because we might have another one coming up in December. And so you'll see that on the IVSS website as soon as that gets finalized. So the IVSS reports, just as a reminder, those are going to be starting to be accepted in early January. And the due date for reports is March 10th, 2021. On March 29th, we'll have a judging webinar, and that is also when our judging period begins. And the judges will have about a week from March 29th to April 5th to turn in their scores and their feedback. And then on Earth Day, we'll do a live drawing for feedback, or live drawing for the stipends, and the teachers will receive their feedback and the badges on their page. And so that's all coming up. We're excited. And so now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Emma Hagen, who also works with me at the GIO. And I'm very excited because she's got a really great presentation. And then later you'll hear from Desiray. So thank you. And go ahead, Emma.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Hagen. I work at the Globe Implementation Office. I'm a member of both the administrative and the education teams, and you'll see my email address right there. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or, want to chat. A little bit more about me. My ArcGIS background, I received a certificate from the University of Colorado Boulder in ArcGIS for Sustainability a little over a year ago. And for the past 5-6 months or so, I've actually been a mapping volunteer for the American Red Cross doing disaster mapping and disaster relief mapping. In 2018, I graduated with my undergraduate degree from the University of Colorado Boulder, and I studied biochemistry and public health. And for fun, I enjoy exploring nature here in Colorado. I enjoy playing tennis, reading. So let's go ahead and get started. The very first question that I have on here is, what does Esri do? And the answer is a lot, but to sum it up, here's a quote that I pulled off of their website. Esri builds ArcGIS, the world's most powerful mapping and spatial analytics software. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about ArcGIS online mapping, and then I'm going to hand it over to Desiray to talk about ArcGIS apps and story maps. So let's dive into that a little bit deeper. First, we're going to start off with a little bit of terminology. So you'll see the ArcGIS website up there at the top. That's how you get to it. And this will come up again. I'm going to show it again as well. On ArcGIS Online, there's 3 main content types. There's layers, there's maps, and there's apps or applications. I'm going to talk about layers and maps, and then I'm going to turn it over to Desiray, and she's going to talk a little bit about apps. But I'll define each of these a little bit more further into this slideshow. So starting off with layers, I like to classify layers based on use. I found it easiest just to look at these two types of layers when I was first starting learning. So these are classified based on use, and the very first one is the base map layer. The base map layer is a layer that provides geographical context. And that's the one that's just on the very bottom of your map. That's the one that gives you all of that context for geography that you might need. The operational layer is the layer or layers on top, and those are editable layers on top of the base map. And that's what we'll be working with today when we add a layers. We'll be working with data in an operational layer. So let's go into a little bit more about layers. Layers are made up of features, and there's three main feature types that I'm actually going to talk about today. The first one being a point, and a point is just one data point. For example, that could be a tree, it could be a bus stop, it could be a building. The next feature I'm going to talk about is a line, and a line represents a boundary or just a line. So that could be a road, it could be a river, it could be a borderline. And the third one I'm going to talk about is a polygon or an area. And a polygon is one homogeneous feature that's larger than a single point. So homogeneous being all one thing. So it could be a building, it could be a lake, it could be a country. And you might notice a bit of overlap. I actually put building under point, and I also put building under polygon. So let's look at a couple examples. So on the left here, you'll see a graphic that I pulled off of the ArcGIS website. This is actually showing the sewer system in a neighborhood. So these points on this map are representing manhole covers to get access to the sewers. The lines are actually the sewer lines, the pipes that are going underground. And the polygons, each of these are a property or a house in this neighborhood. You'll also see a fourth one noted here, an annotation. And an annotation is just text on top of a map to give more geographical context. So in this case, the annotation are the street names. And we're not going to talk about annotations too much further than this. So on the right, you'll see a screenshot that I actually pulled from Google Maps. I'm going to give you a second actually to look at this and try and find a point, a line, and a polygon. And I'm just going to give you a couple seconds to think about it here. So the clearest example of a point that I see is I actually had dropped a pin here, and this is actually on top of a bus stop. So this would be an example of a point. There's another bus stop down here at the bottom here, and that could also be a point. The clearest example of a line are actually the streets that are running through, and those have annotations on top, but these are the lines. And then the clearest example of a polygon is the houses. So the house structures, it's one homogeneous thing, it's one house. So now let's take a step back, and I'm gonna zoom out and give another example. This is a much more zoomed out screenshot from Google Maps. And again, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna give you a couple seconds to look at it, try and find a point, a line, and a polygon. So again, maybe a bit of a giveaway, but I did drop a pin here, and this pin is actually on a building in Denver. It's on the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. And so this could be considered a point. The other points that are in this image are the cities potentially, so Dallas, Kansas City, and Minneapolis. You'll see a circle indicating a point on those, so those could also be considered points. As for lines, these yellow lines that are actually going through the image, these represent highways or freeways, and those are the clearest example of lines. And then for polygons, we actually have states which are represented in this dotted line, and a polygon could be the state of Kansas. A polygon could be the state of Nebraska. So those are the clearest examples I see on those. I hope that gives a little bit more context for what those definitions are. So on my next slide, I have a summary of the content types, and I just gave like a really brief kind of description of each of these. So A layer is the data that you're trying to display. A map is the data that you've created in a geographical context. And over here, I put a definition for app, but again, I'm not going to go into this very much further. So an app is a way of displaying and sharing your maps and research. Now let's get into the fun stuff. I'm going to do a demonstration. So I'm going to demonstrate a couple things actually. And the first thing I'm going to demonstrate is downloading data from Globe's ADAT. And this is something that Ksenia actually demonstrated at her webinar a couple weeks ago as well. So I'm just going to do it again to make sure that we remember how to do that. The next is we're going to make a free Esri account, one that you'll be able to map with yourself. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to create a layer from Globe data to build a map. Now, for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to give kind of a potential research that you might be interested in. So what I was interested in looking at was mosquito habitat mapper data in Thailand from 2018, and I'm going to compare the larva count with water sources. So as I talked about, the first thing we're going to look at is how to download data off of ADAT. And to get to ADAT, you can actually just either go to this link up here at the top, or you can go into Globe data on the globe.gov website and scroll down to the retrieve data section. So let's watch this video. So once you're at this website, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to enter the data access tool. Once you get into here, you will actually add filters in order to find what you're looking for. So I add the mosquito habitat mapper data. If I wanted a date range, I could apply it here, and I didn't in this case, but I'm only going to look at 2018. And then I'm only looking in the country of Thailand, so I'm going to add that filter as well. Once I apply it, the summary data is going to come up, and I'm actually going to click on obtain measurement data and then download measurement data. And I sped this up a little bit, but it might take a little while. So you click on that download pop-up once it does come up, and it'll download a zip file onto your computer. This zip file is going to have the detailed data that you need to use for your project. And that zip file, once we click on it, it's going to open a CSV file. So let's take a look at the raw data as pulled off of ADAT, and then I also made like a more processed data so you can understand kind of what you want it to look like before you stick it into Esri. So this first one, I'm so sorry, I have the wrong spreadsheet up. Give me 1 second. I sincerely apologize. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I should have had this up sooner. So when you pull data off of ADAT, the first thing that you're going to notice is that this data actually has 2 header bars. And so on these header bars, you really want there to only be 1 before you enter it into Desiray. And the header bar is just the description of the data below. So for example, here you'll see latitude, but you'll also see latitude above. You'll see longitude, but you also see longitude above. So you're going to want to condense that into 1 row instead of 2 rows. And I'll show this on a processed spreadsheet as well. The next thing that I did is, unfortunately, when you use the free Esri account, there's a limit on how many rows of data you can add into Esri. And so in this case, we're going to keep it under 1,000 rows of data. And Esri kind of tells you that they only want 1,000 rows of data, but I've been able to enter a little bit more than that before. But Esri will tell you if your file is too big and you need to make it smaller. And that just means deleting a few rows. So in this case, I actually go into my data and I remove all of the artificial records. So these are all mosquito habitats that were artificially done, like in your school classroom or in a lab. And so I'm only going to look at mosquito habitats from natural sources. And the last thing that I did is, since we're comparing larva count with water sources, I went through and I added zeros into all of these larva counts that don't have any information in them. And the reason I did that is because what Esri is going to do is it's going to pull it through as null. And you don't want to see null on this for the purpose of what we want to look at. So I went through and I just entered zeros into all of these mosquito habitat larvae counts that were blank. So I'll show you what that looks like here. So the first thing you'll see is that I only have one header line, and each of these header lines just has a pretty clear and concise description of what's below. The next thing I did, as we talked about, is I removed all of the artificial water source types. So we only have container natural, still, lake, pond, or swamp, or flowing still next to a river or a stream. And this brought our file down to a little over 990 lines, which is under 1,000, which is what we want. And the last thing you'll see is there are a bunch of zeros in here under larvae count, and that's what I added. So now that we have that, our next thing on the to-do list is to go in and make a free Esri account. So in order to get to ArcGIS online, all you have to do is type in arcgis.com/home, and it looks like Amy may have put this link in the chat as well, and that's the one that you can use for anyone who's online right now. But in order to create an account, I first go to sign in. Once I'm on the sign in page, you'll see a create an account button. So we're going to click on that. And this page is a bit misleading because the very first thing that comes up is start a free trial. You don't want to start a free trial because that will start a free trial for the premium ArcGIS online. Instead, what you want to do if you're creating a free account is create an ArcGIS public account. This will pull you up to their create a public account form. So you can fill this out, or you can directly link a GitHub, Facebook, Google, or Apple account in order to log in. So kind of whichever method is best for you. But I already have a free account made, so I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna sign in with Google because I had linked it to a Google account. And so once I'm signed in, you'll notice that there's actually a few more tabs up here. And today we're only gonna talk about 2 of these tabs. So first, let's actually go over to the content tab. And this is where all of your content types are going to live. As you can see here, I've done a bit of testing for this webinar, but this is where your layers, your maps, and your apps will all be located. So if you need to go back and find these later, you can do so in this content tab. Now let's go to the map tab. And the map tab is actually going to directly open a map for you. And it kicks you right into it. So the very first thing we'll look at is zooming in and zooming out. So you can zoom in and zoom out by this plus and minus button. You can also pan across the map by just clicking and dragging. Now I have a scroll wheel on my mouse that I'm using, and so I can also zoom in and zoom out by using the wheel on my mouse. The next thing I want to look at is this search bar right here. So as I had said, I'm going to look at mosquito habitat mapper data in Thailand. So I'm going to click into this bar and I'm actually going to type in Thailand. And what it's going to do is it's going to take me directly there. So I didn't have to pan and go find it and zoom. It just takes me right over there. So now that we have this loaded, let's look at a little bit here on the left-hand side. So the first thing it's going to put you in is this details tab under the about page. So the about page, it might have some helpful information for when you're just getting started on how to add a map or how to choose your base map, or how to add a layer, sorry. The second one is going to be the content tab, and this content tab is where your layers are going to live once you add them. The very last one is going to be the legend. So this will be the key that you have for when you have your layers added. So telling you what points are what and what, yes. I'm going to skip over to this third one over here, and this is, hopefully recognize this, this is the base map. The base map is going to have different base maps depending on what you want to look at. So if right now it automatically pulls you into the topographic map, But if you wanted something with maybe a little bit less topography or colors on it, you could just click on this light gray canvas one, and that'll simplify that map a lot more. So really you can scroll through these and explore them and just pick one that'll work best for whatever you're trying to show. I'm gonna leave it as the topographic map for now. Now the one that I skipped over is this add button, and this is where you're gonna add a layer. And so since we downloaded our globe data into a CSV file, we're gonna add a layer from a file. And as you'll see here, Esri Online, this ArcGIS Online, it does accept a CSV file. So we're gonna go ahead and click on Choose File, and we're gonna add the file that we want to. So this is my edited file, the one that I had processed. And now I'm just gonna click on Import Layer. And as soon as I do this, Esri tries to be really smart and it tries to predict what you want to look at. So what it did is it actually pulled one of the columns of data, and it's trying to predict that I want to look at elevation. So back over on my data spreadsheet, you'll see that the elevation here, that's the information it's trying to pull. But what we want it to look at is this water source column. So we're going to change this, which Esri calls an attribute. We're going to change it to be water source. And you'll see that these drawing styles changed a bit. And ArcGIS is going to give you a drawing style dependent on the data that you're using. So here we have types, unique symbols, and we also have a location one. And the location one is just going to give you one point that means they're all the same thing. But in this case, we want to show different stuff. So we're going to click on this types unique symbols one. And these dots are a little bit small. They're a little bit hard to see. So we can go in and edit this. So we're going to click into options. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to click into this symbols button. So the symbols button is going to edit all of the symbols. So each one of these, it's going to edit all of these circled dots, these points. So these are a little bit small, so I'm actually going to up this in pixel size to about 13 pixels. And they're a little bit hard to see, so I'm also going to add an outline. And I'm just going to add a black outline around each of these points. And now they're a little bit easier to see, which is great. Now you also might notice on this key here that comes up that two of these look very similar, and I think they are the same color to two of the other colors. So if I wanted to edit a specific point, I just click on the actual symbol next to that item, and I can change the color this way. Let's make this one a dark blue. If it wants to. We can make that one a dark purple, say. Oh, and I'm changing the outline here. So instead, you're going to want to leave the outline as black, and you're going to want to click over to fill, and you can change the fill. And let's do that again on this one. So now it's on fill, and we're going to change the fill. So you'll see one of those points change to a dark blue. So now that we've edited these, let's go ahead and save it as is. So we're going to click on OK, and then we're going to click on Done. And now we're back in somewhere that we kind of recognize a little bit more. We're in the Details tab on the Content page. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change the name of this layer that we just created to be a little bit more identifiable. So I'm going to click on this ... and I'm going to rename. And since in this case we're looking at water sources, I'm just going to name it Water Sources. Let's go through each of these symbols under the layer and kind of explore what a few of them do. So this first one right here is going to show a quick legend. And this legend can also be found as long as the layer is checked by clicking over into this legend tab. Now, if you wanted to turn off your layer, you could just uncheck this box and it'll disappear, and you can recheck it to make it appear again. This second button is the table. So the table is actually going to pull up all of your data. It has it right in there for you to look at. And if I wanted to maybe sort some of these, I could actually click on the header and I could sort the data. and it'll push you back to the front. But now that we scroll back over, you can see that the larva count is sorted, and it didn't change any of the data information. It just organized it based off of this larva count. The next one, and you might actually find this familiar, is the change styles. And this is what Esri kicks you into, what ArcGIS kicks you into as soon as you add a layer is. It'll kick you into this change styles window. So since we've already been through this, I'm going to go ahead and click done. Next, let's explore some in this more options drop-down window. So the first one we're going to look at here is this create labels. So let's say you had data that you wanted to show which school each of these points came from. I could just create labels and have the school names show up next to the points. And this will just be dependent based off what you're trying to show. I wouldn't recommend adding it when there's this many points in here because it looks a little bit busy, but if you did want to show the school name or some other information from your data set, you could do so this way. Now, the last one that I'm going to show you right now is actually this copy button. And what this copy button does is it's actually just going to copy this exact data into another layer. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it. And the reason that I did that is because what I'm interested in looking at is the water sources compared to the larva count. And so since the larva count was in this exact same data set, I could just copy it over to create a new layer. And now if I go in to change the styles, I could look at larva count. I can go in and change this here. Once I change that, you'll see a few more drawing styles come up. The very first one is the one that we're going to use, and this is just showing the counts and amounts by size. You can also show the counts and amounts by color, or you can show a heat map. Again, just depending on what you want to emphasize. But I'm gonna edit this a little bit. The first thing that I'm going to do is you'll see that the scale is pretty high. So we're going to change this maximum scale to 200. And then the other thing that I notice here is that some of these circles are kind of small. So I'm also going to go in and change this pixel size. And I'm going to change the minimum pixel size to 25. And I'm going to change the maximum to 120. And as you'll see, that really made those bigger. It really made them easier to see. But since we have colorful data points from the water sources, I'm going to change the symbol so that it's gray. That way it's a little bit easier to see. So I'm going to click on the fill. And I'm just going to change it to a gray. And now you can still see kind of some of the colors in this gray. But as you'll see, we might have a bit of a problem. So I'm also going to rename this layer so that we know exactly what it is. I'm going to rename it to larva count. So you'll see this problem in here as that the water sources are showing up underneath the larva count. So the gray on these is kind of covering up the points. Now, if you wanted to change that, you can actually rearrange layers. And so in order to do this, one way to do so is by clicking on this ... and you can move a layer up. And I had a feeling it was going to do this. My computer's been having some problems recently. So I can show you what that looks like on a map that I've already created. I'm just going to go into content, and I'm going to go into one of my examples here. So this is the same data. But in this case, you'll see that the water sources are on top here. And I'll give it a second to load. So in this case, you'll see that the colors are on top of the gray. So it's the exact same data, I just made a second map for it. So on this larva count, if I were to click into one of these dots here, yeah, let's click into this point. What I really like about working with globe data is you can actually go through and see, once you click on a point, you can see all of the information about that point. And one of the things about GLOBE data is because we have people who are observers submit photos of their sources or of larvae, you can actually click in and look at those photos. So in this case, this person had classified this red point as a ditch here, which if we go into our legend, we can see that that's a ditch. And in the photo, it looks like a ditch, which is pretty cool. So that's a great benefit to doing that. And you also might notice that there are a lot of circles over here. And what this is that just means that there's a lot of points all on that one point. And you can see this by clicking in, you'll see 1 out of 78. And so I could just scroll over and look at the other points that are exactly on top of that one. Great. So that was the very last step in this is actually to save. So I'm going to go back to the map that we were creating. And once you click on save, it's going to have you save a bit of information. So for a title, I'm just going to give it a good title that I can identify with. And then I'm going to make this a little clearer, mosquito data. And then ArcGIS requires you to add a tag, and a tag just is something to make your data easier to find. And then the summary can just be a bit more of a description of what your map is. I'm going to click on Save Map, and you'll see it saving to my content. So what I can do is I can actually click on this drop-down menu up here and go over to Content. And you'll see that this new map has been saved. Okay, so that was the end of my demonstration here. This slide is just a summary about what we talked about. The very first one was we talked a little bit about some terminology. We also pulled some data from ADOT. We created a free Esri account, and we practiced a bit with mapping. This next slide is one that I actually borrowed from Ksenia's webinar from a few weeks ago. I think it has some really great information and some great resources on it. So for your projects, you can look at GLOBE protocols, you can look at GLOBE data, and you can look at GLOBE campaigns. Here I have my email, and I also put the IVSS link in here if you wanted to go get a little bit more information. Thank you so much for watching this webinar. I'm now going to pass it over to Desiray Wilson from My NASA Data, and she's going to talk a little bit more about story maps and apps in ArcGIS.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was really great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my presentation here. All right, and so as Emma mentioned, I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of the apps and story maps that can be created with ArcGIS Online. And again, my name is Desiray Wilson. I currently work with the My NASA Data team at NASA Langley Research Center. And My NASA Data is a website that provides educators and their students access to Earth science educational resources and NASA data collected by satellites. And one of my roles on this team is to develop lesson plans in the ArcGIS story map format for students to learn about different Earth science phenomenon. And I will be teaching you how to do this today. To give a little background about myself, I just recently graduated from South Dakota School of Mines and Technology in 2019 with a degree in geology and a minor in GIS. And I'm now currently attending the University of Arizona to complete my master's degree in GIS technology and remote sensing. So I'm going to start out today with just providing you with an agenda of what I will be talking about. So we're going to introduce what story maps are and how they can be used as a tool for presenting your data. We'll work on accessing several different app templates. I'm going to go over with you the configurable app templates as well as the Storymap templates. And then I'll be showing you how to add your map data to story maps. We'll look at how we can design certain story map elements. And then I'll provide you with several resources for how you can learn more about story maps. We'll start out with an introduction as to what story maps are. Now, story maps are applications that you can build to combine map data, narrative text, images, and other multimedia content to aid you in telling your data's story. So today, you're going to learn how to build your own app that combines these elements to create a really interactive story that you can share with others. And in terms of, say, a globe research project, this could be used as a presentation format that you can upload with your globe project. So it's a really great presentation tool. So to get started creating your story maps, you just need to set up your free account on ArcGIS Online that Emma demonstrated earlier. Everything I'm going to show you today is available with that free account. So next, I wanted to give you a chance to visually see an example of a story map before we get into creating them. And this story map is one that I have created for the MineAsset Data team. And it's on the concept of the urban heat island effect. And for those of you who may not be familiar, an urban heat island occurs when a city experiences much warmer temperatures than the surrounding rural areas, like the countrysides. And this happens because many of the surfaces in cities, the hard, dark-colored surfaces, they absorb and hold more heat than surfaces like vegetation that will remain cooler. So I'm going to be referring to this topic quite a bit throughout this presentation. So I just wanted to give an overview, and I'm going to play this little video here that shows some elements of the story map. Now, one of the first things I want to talk about here is that we have map data that is interactive in these apps. And so what you're looking at here is first we have this map of surface temperature. And I've got this legend here on the side. We're looking at the city of Atlanta, Georgia. And so the yellow areas represent very high surface temperatures, while the blue areas represent lower surface temperatures. And in this story map, I've got this little analysis tool called a spyglass. And that allows me to view the underlying true color satellite imagery. So you can start to do some level of analysis in looking at which surfaces tend to be warmer or cooler in a city. And so in this example, we can see that the warmer surfaces tend to be those darker colored asphalt and concrete that we see in the city. So this is just one example of a tool that can be developed using the story map feature. And then you'll notice on the side, we have opportunities to provide text and images. Now in this example, this is another example of an analysis tool. And we're actually going to be creating this one today. But what you're looking at here is on the left-hand side, we've got satellite data displaying vegetation index. So it shows areas where there's more vegetation. The darker green represents areas with greater vegetation, whereas the white is little to no vegetation. And then we have our same surface temperature map with those yellow areas representing really warm areas and blue representing cool. And by incorporating these analysis tools, we can start to make connections and see patterns in our data, like that vegetation tends to be cooler than other surfaces in a city. And then, whoops, I'm gonna go back real quick. And I just wanna mention that there's a lot of different opportunities to add multimedia content, such as YouTube videos and other graphics that can help you tell your story. And to access this story map, I've provided the link below. All right, so real quickly before we get started, I wanted to go over some tips and tricks for creating story maps. And before creating your story map, you really want to make sure that all of your mapped data is already prepared and styled. And this way, all you have to do is add those maps to the story map, and it's a pretty seamless process. I also find it very helpful to create an outline of your story map, just like you would when writing a paper or a presentation, and deciding ahead of time which kinds of features you'd like to include that will help you tell your story. So at this point, I'm going to show you how to create your first app. And so there's actually two different types of apps that you can create using your ArcGIS Online account. And they are configurable apps and story maps. And so the first I'm going to show you are these configurable apps. And these are actually very short apps, but they feature very specific data analysis tools that can be really helpful for looking at analysis or presenting a simple format for your data. So in this example, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to learn how to make a swipe application for comparing two different maps. And in terms of a research question, you know, if you're interested in learning about, say, like the surface temperature field campaign, you may want to look at different compare surface temperatures with different materials. So we're going to look at comparing that vegetation index with surface temperature, like I showed you in the example story map. So here I'm going to live demo this. So to get started, you just need to go to arcgis.com/home. As Emma presented earlier, when you're developing your content, this is what the home screen looks like. And all you need to do here to get started is go into our content pane, which you've seen before now. And so here I've got some content already prepared. I've got several maps, several feature layers, but we're really interested in comparing those two maps I talked about, Atlanta surface temperature and Atlanta vegetation index. I've already got them created and ready to go. So I'm now ready to begin building my app. And so the first thing we want to do is go to the Create button. And when you click on this, you will see this option here to create configurable apps. Now, when we click on this, actually an entire panel opens up with a bunch of different templates to choose from. So there are many different options, and you can research what many of these do, but they all have different tools to help present your data. So some of them, if we look at this organization on the left-hand side, we've got apps to compare maps and layers, or to explore and summarize data. So there's many different templates, but I'm going to show you one of my favorite ones to use, which is the swipe template. And so if we scroll all the way down to the bottom here, there is an option called Storymap Swipe and Spyglass. Now, these configurable app templates that have Storymap in the name, they're sometimes referred to the older Storymap format. There's a new Storymap builder that has come out since, which is the other portion of the webinar that I'm going to present today, is how to use these new Storymap builders. But anyway, we'll select our Storymap Swipe and Spyglass template, and then we will select Create Web App. And so I'm going to just name my web app Surface Temperature and Vegetation Index Swipe App. For tags, I'm going to choose some tags that relate to the data, such as surface temperature and vegetation index. You have the option to add in a summary. I'm going to say this app allows you to compare surface temperature and vegetation index. And then when you finish entering in this information for the app you're going to build, you just select Done. And what it's going to do is it's going to open up an entirely new window here, which is the builder. And this is a really pretty seamless process for adding your content that's already prepared. In this example, all we really need to provide are the two web maps that we have created. And so here, it's wanting us to select our first web map. We'll add the other one in just a moment, but for now, we just need to select one. So I'm going to click this magnifying glass, and it's going to open up some of the maps that I've created in my content. And so I'm going to start with this Atlanta surface temperature map. And then I'll select Next. We'll give it just a second. Now, this template is called the Swipe or Spyglass Builder. It actually gives you two options, and you can choose between the vertical bar swipe or the spyglass, both of which I demoed in that earlier Storymap example. But I'm going to stick with, for this presentation, the vertical bar. It's the defaulted, it's the default selected layout. So we're just going to move on to the next section. Now here, it asks you, what do you want to swipe? Now, we could, if we had a web map with multiple layers, we could set it up so that we're only swiping one of those layers, or we can compare two different web maps that we've created. And I've prepared my content in the format of two different web maps, so I'm going to select this type. And it has here your left web map and your right web map. And remember, we already selected that Atlanta surface temperature, so it already has that placed in the left web map ID. So now all I need to do is add the vegetation index map. That's right here in my content again. And then we move on to next. Now there's different layout settings that you can choose to add and customize to your simple app. And so you can add more text with a description or enable legends. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to deselect these options just to create a very simple map. And then all we have left to do is open the app. And so it brings it up for us. I want to mention that it defaults to the extent of your first map. So it took my saved settings from Atlanta surface temperature and how far I was zoomed in, and it just automatically applied that to this app. And then it's really neat, it just automatically aligns my vegetation index map to the same extent. And so now we can take a closer look and compare these vegetation and surface temperature measurements using this analysis tool. And so it's really great. I mean, in terms of like globe data, even the example Emma showed previously with comparing water source and larva content, this could also be displayed in something like a swipe to compare those two different variables. It's really great. So lastly, I just want to mention that once you get to the preview of your app, you really need to make sure you save it. And once you save this application, it'll appear in your content back in the ArcGIS Online content pane. You also have the option to share if you would like, and you can share your app publicly from here or also in the content pane of ArcGIS Online. All right, and real quick, I'm going to go back to this presentation and give you a quick introduction to the new Storymap Builder. So these are the new Storymap templates, and these story maps are slightly different than the configurable apps I just showed you because they allow you to create a longer article-like app, which includes more elements than those available in the configurable apps that are short and really used to just complete one analysis or purpose with your data. And so in these Storymap templates, you're allowed to use images, videos. You can add multiple maps with several different analysis tools. And you can add more lengthy descriptions as far as text goes. To start with the new Storymap templates, you actually need to visit a separate URL. It's called storymaps.arcgis.com. And you'll just sign in using your same ArcGIS Online information. And then so at this point, I'm going to demo to you how to develop story maps using this new Storymap Builder. So you go to storymaps.arcgis.com. And it automatically signs me in because I'm signed in up here on ArcGIS Online. But this is what the page looks like when you get started. So far, I have no stories created, so this is exactly what you'd see as you get started. And you have the option here to add new story or create your first story down here. So we're going to select create a story. And our story, it's going to be real focused on the urban heat island effect. And say we've been working with the surface temperature field campaign. We've uploaded some surface temperature data that we've collected around Atlanta, Georgia, but we also want to explain the concept of an urban heat island. So we want to add more text and maybe some graphics. So here, I want to mention that I already have all of my map data prepared again, and it's sitting in my content in ArcGIS Online. And I've also prepared this story map outline that has all the text that I want to include so that we can just incorporate it, copy and paste it quickly. So I'm going to name this story Studying the urban heat island effect. And then after I title my story, you'll see up here in the top right, I have the option to add a cover image or a video. And I'm going to select that quickly. And it gives me the option to browse through my files so that I can select an image that I have saved. And so I'm going to navigate to my folder, which contains my images. And I've got this really nice image that kind of depicts an urban heat island. So I'm going to add that. Down here at the bottom, select add. And this is what it looks like so far. But one of the things I've noticed is it kind of cuts out the top part of my image. I can't see that sun that I want to show. So I can go into the design elements tab up here at the top. And it actually gives me some cover options. I can choose to create this side-by-side look, or I can choose a full cover. And that's the one I want to choose because it shows the whole image really well. I also want to mention briefly that you can change the theme to some of the pre-selected that are available to you. They have different font and color aspects to them. But I'm going to remain with the default summit design. Okay, so we're ready to start adding content, and now that we've created our title page. And to do that, all you have to do is select this plus button below the title page. And it's going to come up with a bunch of different options to choose from. You can choose text, you can add a map, an image, a video, and you can also incorporate that same swipe tool that we've been working with so far. And so I'm going to start with text. I want to give an introduction into what the urban heat island effect is. So you can see here I've got some different options to bold and italicize my text. Right now I'm in the regular paragraph text setting, but I want to start with a heading, something big and bold. So I'm going to select this heading option. And then I'm going to go to my outline, and I'm going to select my first heading that I've identified, and I'm just going to paste that in. And now I'm ready to add a paragraph to follow, so I'm going to add text again, but this time I'm going to leave it on the default paragraph, and then I'm going to copy the text I've written and paste it pretty easily. And now I want to give I want to put in a graphic that kind of depicts the urban heat island. So I'm going to select this image button, and just to go over this quickly, you can browse to your files again. You also have the option to add a link, and so if you want to just copy the image URL online, you can do that as well. But I have all my images saved, so I'm going to add my urban heat island graphic. And it appears pretty quickly there. There's also different sizing options, and these are available for all the content you can add. You can make large, medium, or small. And I'm going to stick with the default medium option. I'm going to go on to my next section. We've been looking at this vegetation versus surface temperature, this analysis to kind of explain how different surfaces absorb and retain heat. And so I want to add that same swipe analysis tool that we've been working with. And so I went in and I just selected the swipe option, and I'm going to show you how seamless this is in the new Storymap Builder. You just need to add the left and right web map. So you just select the option. I'm going to click my Atlanta surface temperature. It's actually going to pull up the map and give you an opportunity to change the extent if you'd like. but I already have saved my map extent, so I'm going to place this as is. And then I just need to add my second map of vegetation index. And again, with these, you can also change the size as well. And we also want to describe it, so I'm going to copy and paste some text I've written again with a header. And then a paragraph to describe it. And then lastly, say as part of our surface temperature research project we've been looking at, we went around Atlanta and we took our own surface temperature measurements, and we want to show them to others, such as our classmates and other teachers. In this section, we're going to add a map with our own data, similar to what Emma showed previously, some measurement data that can be downloaded off the Globe site. So real quick, I'm going to add my heading from my outline. Add a quick paragraph. And then I already, remember, I have all of my maps prepared. So all I need to do is select the option to add a map. I'm going to select this Atlanta surface temperature measurements. And what I've done here is say I've uploaded these point data myself that I've collected, and I have decided to overlay them on top of the satellite data. So they can be seen here and interacted with as points. So I pulled up this map and I can choose to select a different extent. I like this, so I'm going to select place map. And it seamlessly appears. And maybe lastly, we actually compared some different surfaces, so we just want to quickly add an image of some graph data that we made in Excel. And then just like that, I've created a nice little presentation on the urban heat island effect in my research. If I'm ready to publish, or actually just see how it would look to other users, I can select the preview, or if I feel that I'm very ready to publish, I can select this publish button. And you can publish without making it private or public. You can remain private, and that's what I'm going to do, so only I have access to this app. And then right after I publish, this story map will appear in my content pane on ArcGIS Online. You will see a story map listed there with this title. So just to give you a quick look at the final product, this is what it looks like. We've got our interactive elements. We can zoom in and out and interact with some data we've collected. All right, so quickly I'm going to wrap up here with just a few closing points by going back to the presentation. I just wanted to put in a quick reminder that when sharing story maps publicly, you need to make sure that all of your data and maps that are used within the story map are also shared publicly. And you need to do this because otherwise, if you share the app publicly but not your maps, they will appear as unavailable to those you share it with. It'll be grayed out in the area where your map would be. So just make sure you do that. And then if you're interested in collecting some ideas or looking for some resources on story maps, there is a Storymap gallery site featured on Esri's website. And I've shared the link here on this slide. At this site, you can browse for award-winning story maps to collect ideas, or you can find resources to get started to troubleshoot problems you've been having, and other resources. So I encourage you to visit there. I also want to briefly mention the Storymap collection we have featured on My NASA Data. Here you can find 6 story maps that we've developed on the topics of hurricanes, urban heat islands, sea ice extent, volcanic eruptions, phytoplankton, and ocean circulation patterns. And to access these, you just need to navigate to our Storymap Collections page, which is listed under the Resources tab. And with that, I just want to thank you all for tuning in. If you have any questions about what I presented today, feel free to reach out to me at my email listed here. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Amy for some final comments.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Ooh, my hair's all messed up. Great job, Emma and Desiray. Thank you so much for presenting. And thank you, everyone who came. If you have any questions, I'll put the Globe or the IVSS email in the chat here. And like I said, this recording will be available later. So thank you all for coming. And that's it.
Thank you again.